Green, also known as Susan Milner. We are reading chapter 6 of DND number 1, A Healing in Jesus' Name. Here we go. Eric timed Shelley in the 40 and then had her run 2 miles. She pushed herself hard, almost to the point of collapse. This time, though, he noticed and made her stop and walk. Usually I have to make my students work harder, he teased. She shrugged. Well, I really want to do well. Well, so I know I said this is a test, but it's not one you can fail. It's just to see where you are. I'm not going to change my mind if you can't run 2 miles, because in a few months, 10 miles will be nothing to you. He smiled at her furrowed brow. Stop worrying. You'll be fine. He tugged gently on her ponytail. Let's get some lunch. They heaped mounds of scenery onto plastic plates at an all-you-can-eat salad bar. Cold from the air conditioning, Shelley found a seat near a window where the sun was providing a nice greenhouse effect. So, Ms. Adams, you are going to have some personal time tomorrow, Eric stated as they ate. She looked up, her eyes questioning. Momentarily distracted, Eric allowed himself to take in the beauty before him. Sunshine danced in Shelley's golden brown hair, giving it strong red highlights. Her cheeks were pink from exercise, and her smile made him smile. He pulled himself back and focused. Because I'm not going to be here, he finished. I'm flying to LA early in the morning, and I won't be back until very late. Actually, not until the wee hours of Thursday morning, he explained. Don't worry, though. I'm making a huge list of things for you to do while I'm gone. The most important is to go to your doctor's appointment at 10:30. Then I'm hoping you'll do me a favor and meet with my realtor at 1. Your realtor? Shelley asked. Yes, she's finding an apartment for me. Her name is Candace Baker, and she has all the preliminary work done. All you have to do is go with her to see the 3 options, choose one, and pick up the key. She's already been paid for a full year of rent. Just tell her I'll be in to sign the lease when I return. A full year of rent? Wow. And you want me to choose? He smiled. Yep, I trust you. I'll take care of it, Shelley promised. They slipped into silence, and Eric could tell that Shelley was concerned about something. He wondered if she was unsure about handling the apartment situation. He was about to ask her when she spoke. Eric, Shelley began timidly, looking down at her salad. So, what kind of doctor's appointment is this going to be? It's a complete physical exam. He could sense her wince inwardly, even though she tried not to be obvious. She looked up at him briefly and then returned her gaze to a crouton lying on the table, but said nothing. I have to have it on record, he explained. If I'm going to insure you, and I have to insure you if I'm going to get sponsors. Why? Is there a problem I need to know about? She pushed the crouton around the table with her fork. Oh, no, I just hate going to the doctor. She took a deep breath and gave him a quick smile. So, then, what else do you need me to take care of? I am at your service. Eric thought a minute about whether he should pursue what was bothering her now and get it out of the way, or wait for it to surface on its own. He decided she'd already had a rough day, and so he'd let it go for now. Anyway, she made it obvious. She hadn't wanted Claude to touch her earlier, and she does not want the doctor to examine her, and at the moment he felt it would be extremely satisfying to have access to the man who'd done this to her. He took a deep breath, wiped the thought from his mind, said a quick prayer, and went on. Oh, I have lots of things for you to do. There's some grocery shopping, some papers to be typed up, hard copied and filed, some reading, plus your regular morning and evening routines, with a mile added to the morning. Oh, wow. Sorry I asked, she moaned. Eric smiled at her. He'd been smiling a lot lately. It seemed everything she did made him smile. They finished their salads and headed back to the dojang. The rest of the afternoon was spent working on forms, and by the end of the day, she knew roughly every form in the art of Taekwondo, from white belt to black belt. He left her practicing them as one long sequence while he went to the desk to try to finish up loose ends before his trip in the morning. 45 minutes later, Shelley drank some water and sat down in front of the desk. She watched Eric work on what appeared to be 10 different things at once. I've got them down, she said breathlessly. Good, he said without looking up. Keep practicing. She remained in her seat, however, and a few minutes later Eric looked up. Do you have a question? Yes, it's almost 6. Doesn't Brian have a class? Well, not on Tuesdays or Sundays. He looked at his watch. Are you tired? A little, she lied, and then at his sharp look, amended. Yes, I'm tired, but I think I've got the forms down, she said again, as if unsure he heard her the first time. Well, that's good, Eric said cheerfully. Remember, though, every time you do them, you need to perfect another movement. Also remember that they're just forms, katas. You haven't developed the strength and power that comes from here, he patted his stomach, or the knowledge and the technique that comes from here. He touched his head. And most of all, you haven't made a place for them to come together here. He placed his hand over his heart. Shelley listened intently, trying hard to understand, but eventually gave in to her urge to giggle. You sound like Mr. Miyagi, from Karate Kid. Eric pointed a stern finger at her. Yes, I know Mr. Miyagi, both the character and the actors who've portrayed him, and you know who you sound like? You sound like my son. She gave a sheepish grin. Speaking of your son, when do I get to meet him? Eventually, Eric replied as he began typing on a laptop. Right now, he's working on a movie, so he won't be free for several weeks. Disappointed, Shelley leaned her head in her hands and sat watching him. She watched his fingers tap the keys and then trace some information from a book. She watched his hands flip through pages of what looked like a handwritten journal, the same hands that could throw lethal punches and break boards, and just this morning had held her hands. So strong and yet so gentle, she thought. So what is all this you've been working on? She questioned. Well, you see, there's a lot more to it than just coming and working out every day. Training an athlete for anything has become very scientific. There are definite and precise goals to be met, formulas of health and strength to follow, progress charts to be kept, records of everyday activities, menus, financial records and reports, your needs physically, emotionally, and financially, and even my needs. All this goes into the computer and gets sorted out to a plan of action. I've been trying to get things done, so while I'm gone tomorrow, you can type some things up and set up folders for each category, and with all that out of the way, by Thursday, we'll be ready to roll. He showed her the system he was working on, the program where they'd chart her course and progress, and all the online forms on the business side. And when Shelley yawned, he realized it was almost 7. Well, it's been a long day. Let's get out of here. Wait, though. What are you going to do in the morning? Shelley counted on her fingers. Be here at the regular time. She eyed him, but he held his tongue. Flexibility, forms, abdominals, run 2 miles, shower, dress, doctor appointment. Good. And what are you going to do tonight? He asked. On her fingers again, Shelley counted. Abdominals, forms, and flexibility. Eric shook his head. Well, you missed one. You have to eat. But since it's so late, let me take you out to eat so you won't have to cook. Oh, thank goodness, Shelley said. I'm too tired to cook. Well, you want to run home and change and I'll pick you up? That sounds good. New scene. Eric pulled up into the driveway of a small brick split-level home in a modest neighborhood. By the way, breaking character a moment, if you go to the website, in the photo album, I made a couple of pictures on AI of this house. Neither one of them are exact, but they're pretty close. Okay. A small brick split-level home in a modest neighborhood. Except for one small peculiar patch of high grass covered in weeds, the tiny front yard was neat and tidy. One tree stood as sentry near the street, and bright yellow flowers filled 2 small flower boxes that lined the tiny front porch. Decorative grasses ran along either side of the short concrete walkway leading from the driveway to the porch. Simple, clean, and bright, it reminded him of Shelley. She opened the door before he was able to knock. Come in, she said quickly, and dashed up a small flight of stairs. I'll be right down. Looking curiously around the room as he waited, Eric learned more about the woman who'd so quickly become a part of his life. The first to catch his eye were the pictures of her children that lined the walls. She'd never bragged about them, but she could have, Eric thought, because they were beautiful. Her dark-haired daughter was especially breathtaking. The two younger boys were adorable with their light brown hair and impish grins. Both boys had inherited Shelley's big, brown, doe-like eyes. The room was simply furnished with the plain brown sofa, a table with an old lamp, and an old turntable with several records on the top. A basket of silk yellow daisies graced the living room table, along with several kung fu karate magazines, which made him smile. He could see more yellow flowers through the entrance to the kitchen, both on the table and adorning the curtains. A glance down the stairs to a den showed a picture on the wall of a field of yellow flowers. The home didn't speak of money, but did speak of love, the love of a large family. He could imagine the record player blasting out tunes while the children made fun of Mom and Dad as they, quote, rocked out to their favorite music. Then again, he knew that wasn't how it had been for Shelley. Eric looked up to see what he thought was an angel floating gracefully down the stairs. Shelley wore a flowing white gauze skirt paired with a white blouse. A fringed leather belt hung loosely around her waist, and a matching leather-beaded hair clasp gathered her hair back from her face. The contrast of the soft white material paired with the tough leather was a contradiction, and so like her. She caught him off guard, and he breathed out slowly. "Wow, you look wonderful." "Thank you," she said, blushing. Eric tried to find something to talk about that would get his mind off what he was thinking. You have a lovely home." "Thanks. I take it you like yellow flowers, daisies, right?" he said with a smile as he motioned toward the several examples. It had been an innocent comment which didn't require a major response, but it received one anyway. "Oh, I do like daisies, but actually they're just a substitute for my real favorite flower." Which is a dandelion. I'd bring them in and put them in vases all around the house, but you see, you can't just pick dandelions and bring them in the house. They wilt and die too fast. She'd piqued his interest. As usual, a train comes by whenever I'm reading. Let that get past there. She'd piqued his interest. Most people consider dandelions a weed. "I know," she shrugged, "but I love them. I think they look fresh and happy, sort of like tiny yellow suns. They grow wild and free, and they're so strong. Really, you can't kill them. If left alone, they never die. Even in their old age, they just become fairies and fly away to live again. They remind me of people." "People? Are you saying that people become fairies and fly away?" he asked with a chuckle. "Ha ha, no. I'm talking about freedom. Dandelions have to be free. If captured, meaning if you pick them, no matter how much water you put them in, they wither and die. People are like that. People need to be free. Without freedom, we wither and die. Without freedom, there's no will to live." She paused and caught herself. "Anyway, dandelions make me feel happy. When I look over at my little patch of tall grass, it's almost like they say hello to me, like they understand me and I understand them. Live and let live, respect for life, respect for each other's worth. It's hard to explain." She smiled up at him. "You must think I'm out of my mind." "Oh, on the contrary. What I think is that you're going to be a wonderful student," he uttered softly. He opened the door, and they walked out into the evening, the lowering sun casting a soft glow on her modest home. Glancing over at the dandelion patch, which he'd earlier thought of as weeds, he smiled. He took her to a local steakhouse where they ate and talked about their kids, and they laughed. They laughed a lot, and they stayed too late. And at 9, Eric knew he needed to get her home, but he was enjoying himself so much he wanted to stay with her. Just a little longer, he told himself. He invited her for a drive, asking her to show him around the area. And when they came to a small park near Shelley's home, he swung in. They walked down a path to a bench overlooking a small pond. Eric had only intended to sit there for a few minutes, but their conversation turned to religions and philosophies, and Shelley's childlikeness disappeared. Eric raptly listened to her expound words of wisdom about the power of love. She believed anything was possible. Her mind was completely open, and Eric knew that was why she was progressing in her life. They talked and talked as one subject led to another, until they realized they shared the same views on an amazing number of subjects, except for one. Shelley didn't seem to have any beliefs about God. She wasn't closed to the idea that God exists, though she seemed doubtful. She'd never been taught about anything spiritual. That realization brought them to a lull in their conversation, and they sat silently, staring into the night sky. Eric's thoughts were directed heavenward, asking for guidance in opening Shelley's heart to the concept that God exists. For Eric knew, not just believed, but knew since he was 10 years old that God was real. He is very real. And Eric knew because he'd experienced a miracle. As a child, he'd been trapped deep underneath the earth in a cave when he was visited by a heavenly messenger. Shelley's yawn broke the silence, and Eric immediately responded, I need to get you home. Yes, Shelley agreed. It's late, and I still have my evening routine to do, as you know. Eric looked at his watch and was surprised to find it was 11:30. He sighed, disappointed in himself. Well, I guess you can skip this one time, he suggested. Shelley's eyebrows rose. What about self-discipline and obedience? He shrugged with a sheepish smile. Well, I guess a tree must learn to bend. He gave her no chance for a comeback. He stood and pulled her to her feet. Keeping hold of her hand, they walked back to the car, and Shelley was so sleepy after her long, hard day, her eyes had begun to water, and somewhere between the park and her home, she fell asleep. Eric found it difficult to watch the road. Finally, he swung the car into the narrow driveway. He thought he'd have to carry her in, but she woke when he turned off the engine. He led her into the house and not only opened the door for her, but accompanied her up the stairs into her room. She sat wearily on the bed. What are you doing? She mumbled. I'm making sure you get to bed, and I'm making sure your alarm is set, because you have a tendency to be late. She smiled and closed her eyes. It seemed strange to have another man in the bedroom that she'd shared only with her husband. It also seemed strange to have him in the room where she'd spent so many incredibly lonely nights during the past year. Strange, yet the familiarity of Eric putting her to bed didn't bother her at all. In her half-asleep, half-awake state, she allowed herself the thought that it felt wonderfully safe to have him here, and it wouldn't hurt just this once to let someone take care of her for a change. It was almost a foreign concept. He helped her slip off the leather belt. She immediately laid back and closed her eyes. Regarding her as she laid there, he realized this was not the platonic relationship it was supposed to be. He pulled the spread down, moved her up onto her pillow, and slid off her shoes. She curled up on her side, smiling a contented smile as he pulled the blankets up over her. He checked the alarm clock on the bedside table. She gave a little sigh, and he realized she was already fast asleep. He gazed at the woman, who was a bundle of inconsistencies, and shook his head. Curled up like a kitten, she appeared fragile, but she was nowhere near. She had power. He could feel it, and now it was his job to help her use it. He turned off the lamp beside her bed and turned to go. Immediately, though, Shelley gasped and sat up, her hand searching for the switch in the darkness, and Eric quickly turned it back on. What's wrong? Shelley shrugged and looked down at her hands. I usually sleep with the light on. Eric's heart fell. He wanted to pull her close and hold her and protect her from all the demons that haunted her. Instead, he sat down next to her on the bed and spoke quietly. You're a little too big to be afraid of the dark, aren't you? She looked ashamed as her quiet words tumbled forth. I know, but sometimes when the lights are off, I get this spooky feeling that someone is standing over me. It's usually only when I'm alone. When the kids are here, I'm fine. I know it sounds crazy, and you must think that I'm a complete idiot. Not at all, Shelley. You've been traumatized and haven't actually healed. Scoot over. Scoot over? He nodded, waved his hands at her, and she scooted over. He sat, leaning his back against the headboard and stretching his legs out on the bed beside her. You've had some experiences in your life that would give anyone a phobia. So now, let's finish this thing together. He reached toward the lamp, and they were in darkness once more. I'm right here. You can sleep without fear, he said, as he touched her face gently. I'll say a prayer and ask for your healing and your protection. You'll eventually learn to let go of fear, because fear lowers your vibration. He wanted her to know that she was never alone, that God is with us, and He is real. He spoke softly as he prayed. Her hand reached out for his in the darkness. He took her offering and gave her hand to squeeze. And when he finished the prayer, they were quiet. Eric shifted his weight, trying to get comfortable. He sat silently, stroking the back of her hand. And as the minutes ticked by, her grip loosened until she fell asleep, and her hand slid onto the bed. She seemed so vulnerable now compared to earlier at the park, he thought, when she was telling him how she'd change the world and make it a better place. Looking up at the glowing numbers on the nightstand, he sighed heavily and closed his eyes and tried to rest his head against the wall. He had to be at the airport at 5 a.m., and he realized tomorrow, or rather today, was going to be a hard day. His body yearned to get prone. Finally giving in to temptation, he slid down on the bed next to her. She immediately turned to him and snuggled close. His arm wrapped around her waist. Her face was so close to his, he couldn't resist. He pressed his lips to hers. He woke with a start. It took several moments for his heart rate to slow. Realizing he'd been dreaming, he wasn't sure if he felt disappointment or relief. He was sure, however, that a cold shower would be very helpful right about now. A glance at the clock told him there was no time for that. Apparently, he'd slept for hours. Eric slid quietly off the bed and out of the room. He laid a set of keys to the dojang along with a note on the living room table, and pausing at the front door, before stepping out into the wee hours of the morning, he looked toward the upstairs. He could sense the loneliness she must feel each night, and it sickened him, thinking of her frightened and alone. At least by the end of the summer, her children would come home and make her happy, happier than the dandelions could. He left silently, locking the door behind him, and Eric hit the hotel at a run, packed, checked out, and made it to the airport by 5:15, 15 minutes later than planned. He chuckled as he worked his way through security and ran through the terminal, headed for the train that would take him to his gate. 15 minutes late, he thought. Now she has me doing it. James, chapter 3, verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. And that is the end of chapter 6.